Now, in regard to the facilities that were attacked, to get into some of the bombings and the actions, and this is an important one because this is a big deal in regard to the location. One thing I'm going to do really quickly, actually, play one thing, grab one thing, and I'll be right back. Actually, let me see if this one. Let's see. Yeah, I'll just play this one. Just give me 30 seconds.
This starts, and it's really fascinating to go back. It starts in 1996 with Netanyahu, who wrote a book called Fighting Terrorism. And the thesis of the book is quite straightforward and very dangerous. He says, there's Hamas, there's Hezbollah, they oppose Israel. It's not good for us to fight them directly. That won't work. What we need to do is topple the governments that back them. So what we need is regime change throughout the Middle East. And he actually gave a long list of 7 countries that included Syria, Libya, Iraq, Iran, Somalia, Sudan, and Lebanon. And systematically, the United States has done Netanyahu's bidding for almost 30 years now, going to war with every one of them except for the big one that Netanyahu so much longs for, which is the war directly between the United States and Iran.
Well, it's good timing and actually important to play at that moment, even though you've seen it many times. Okay, so the attack on this facility, which, as we just talked about, is being misrepresented, in my opinion. And what we're discussing is an attack on a oil facility that has already been, or rather that oil facilities have already been attacked by Israel after the fact that Trump said that wasn't supposed to happen. And then the U.S. government attacked multiple tankers. I mean, so you have to understand that Trump tried to make it seem like that's not what we were supposed to be doing. We didn't want that. And then bombed oil. So there's only 2 ways to look at that. They lied to you to make you think that wasn't going to happen, then did it anyway. Or he genuinely didn't want it to happen, and then Israel made them. You could decide for yourself, because that's how that went. And then we have things like this. And so what it shows you clearly in my mind is that Israel is creating the situation to drive up oil prices, even though that hurts Trump, because this is what they'll use to kind of drive the world into a point of chaos, which is what they do to justify its actions. Because you think of it like a form of global sanctions, right? So Israel is basically creating a situation where everyone's going to start to suffer because of what they're doing. Everyone knows they're doing it, but at some point they're going to go, you know what? We don't want to suffer anymore. We know you're doing it, Israel. Fine. Let's take out Iran. Let's get this over with. And then we'll, that's what I see this as. Energy facilities attacked in Iran and Qatar sending prices soaring. Now it says Iran and Qatar on Wednesday accused Israel of attacking the Iranian part of a giant offshore natural gas field that the 2 countries share, sending the prices of oil and natural gas soaring on what would be a sharp escalation of strikes on energy infrastructure in the war. And this is particularly an important one. Hours after the strikes on the Iranian facilities, the state-owned Qatari energy company, who's arguably on the side of Israel and the United States, at least in the this action, and pretty much because of like most of these countries have been overtaken and manipulated by outside forces. They said that a major energy hub in the country, Ras Laffan Industry City, has sustained, quote, extensive damage from missile attacks. That's Qatari officials, and they blamed Iran for the attack. Qatari officials. International oil prices settled above $107 a barrel, their highest settlement level since the war started on February 28th. Natural gas prices are more regional, but they climbed in Europe, the United States, and Asia. Iran's oil ministry said on social media that airstrikes had damaged a number of its facilities connected to the offshore South Pars field, part of the world's largest offshore natural gas reservoir, part of the world's largest, which is shared by Iran and Qatar. It appeared to be one of the most significant energy sites to be hit since the U.S.-Israel air war against Iran began nearly 3 weeks ago. Now, this is what I find so interesting about this. Well, first of all, let's be clear. Qatar is obviously on the side of them in this engagement. They were already bombing, or rather helping them bomb Iran. That's why Iran responded to them as one of the locations. And that's important. Let's remember, I think it was the, I forget the location, but the installation, $1.1 billion installation that they bombed there. Now, so the U.S. and Israel couldn't utilize that technology. My point is, if Qatar stands up and says that, it should be questioned. It's just like I said before, it's just as likely that Iran decided to respond because it would be, I guess, an easier action than direct bombing of Israel and the United States. It would be seen as kind of a sidestep, but it would still be a response if they are maybe trying to walk it back to some degree. But I just don't, to me, and this is my opinion, it doesn't make much sense. Because I'm waiting for Iran's response to say, if Israel did that, or see what they said. Because to me, especially since it's in the same basic general location, they're not necessarily the same thing, but they're close. And idea being that Israel would bomb this, why wouldn't they bomb? I mean, I guess the point, because Qatar would be upset with that, but maybe it's because they wanted to blame Iran. Like, we have to start thinking about it. Either way, Israel did in fact bomb, or rather, excuse me, the U.S.-Israel coalition bombed these locations, and their argument is that Iran attacked the Qatar location. Omar Badar points out, Israel's creating an environmental catastrophe in Iran and a global economic crisis by forcing an unprecedented disruption to the world energy supplies. That's what I was saying. You're creating a situation where even though I know you're doing it, there's so much fallout from this, for the billionaire elitist class. So, but average gas prices and everything else too. If genocide in Gaza wasn't a red line, he says, we know Israel's rogue regime will stop at nothing to get regional domination. And this is Dropsite News. Israel has struck Iran's South Par gas field, the world's largest natural gas field and a core pillar of Iran's energy supply. So then, do you think Iran responded by bombing Qatar, which is right next to it, especially since they're trying to make sure that, also, and this is, again, there's so many angles to consider the false flag point, whether this wasn't Iran, but a drone made to look like Iran, but also that they told Qatar that they would not bomb them if they stopped bombing or helping them do that. So the question is, was Qatar still helping fuel and, help them use their bases? Probably. So then it would justify the response. But my simple point is to question who was responsible for it. But again, either way, Israel's the one that targeted the South Pars gas field, which is the most important part of this, because it's a massive natural gas field, and that's something that's going to affect the global prices. I think that's by design. So here is Ryan Grimm citing on Abitrand, saying, he says, I was unfortunately in the right ballpark. Qatar Energy just announced that they have to declare force majeure on long-term contracts for up to 5 years. As I wrote, he says, we're deep into worst scenario territory. And it says, Qatari Energy CEO tells Reuters, we may have to declare force majeure on long-term contracts for up to 5 years for LNG supplies to Italy, Belgium, Korea, and China. So that adds to, in my mind, to the more likely that Iran did it, because this is something that was a response. They knew if that's the way that went down would affect the, I guess, it's so hard because China, that doesn't seem to line up with what they're aiming at. But, Italy, possibly. Yeah, so it's just hard. But I think that you could see a world that might make sense. But I would think that my gut is leaning in the direction that this is done because of that original point of creating a supply issue and blaming it on Iran. And then in this case, even claiming that Iran did it. And it's what Arnaud said this yesterday. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but if infrastructure like this, and points to that exact place, gets blown up, as of this moment, it will take at least a decade to recover from this war. And the truth is that the world's energy picture has probably changed forever. Now, think about this in the larger context. So you're in a situation where you're losing and you're Israel. And clearly, your point was to make it that Iran was the one holding us all hostage with nuclear threat. Didn't work. No one buys it because it's not true. So then you turn it into a situation where they're the ones that are starting the war, and that didn't work either. So then you're in a situation where, they're blocking the strait and they're causing oil prices. No, they're not. They didn't do that. They're letting everybody through except you guys. Yep. And I proved that right in the beginning. You still have mainstream alternative claiming it's closed. How embarrassing. Mainstream still says that. How ridiculous. It's been open since day one. They never closed it, guys. It's very easy to look. I'll show you in a second. It's right here. It's been open the entire time. Now, what they're telling you is they restricted specifically Zionists. That's what they said. Hormuz is closed only to Zionists. That's what they just said. We'll come back to it. The point, though, here is they shifted into they're blocking the strait and everyone's going to suffer, but that wasn't happening. They put mines in the water, Trump clumsily created by saying if they do, it's not happening yet. And then like an hour later, they're doing it. Doesn't seem they did. Otherwise, that would be a big deal right now. I don't think it happened. Even though they have, and it's happened before, I think that they knew they didn't want to cross that line because what would happen? They would turn the world against them. They're tactful. They're tacticians in all this. So now it switches to Iran bombed the main thing that will cause a decade of issues for our supply line. But was it Iran? Ask that question. Ryan Grimm says outrageous murder-suicide unfolding, essentially the U.S. and Israel doing this to themselves in the world, right? For no reason, he says. And this is the most important part. As we told you before, Iran put a strong deal on the table. But the U.S. and Israel decided to destroy the world instead, which perfectly lines up with ushering in the new structure, doesn't it? To build back better. Don't forget that, because this is very much part of it, if you understand where this goes. But overall, the deal. Foreign Minister of Oman, what did he tell you? That they offered to give up their enriched material, right? So this comes down to the idea that they're trying to stop that. And they have to do this to stop that, even though we already know that it was not even a problem to begin with. But it gets even more interesting. Here's what they just put out. This is from today. Trump faces his most difficult Iran decision. They're literally they're discussing, considering about deploying U.S. troops to seize the uranium in Iran. So you already realize why that's insane? Because one, they don't have anything enriched to a point it's violating any kind of agreement. And two, that the main thing that they offered was that they would give up their enriched uranium. And then they bombed them, right? So they offer through the deal, which the foreign minister of Oman will tell you, and I've already played this for you, and here's the actual article, that they agreed to give up their stockpile, which is what they're now saying we need to go in to get. You see how crazy this is? So the reality is they either didn't want this to happen so they could make the justification to invade Iran, and Trump's a part of that, or he is being wildly played. Because the reality is that they were going to give it up. So if you're going to send American troops into Iran to take the thing they were already willing to give to you, this is Israel destroying this country. Within hours of Oman foreign minister saying, quote, and he went on, I made fun of this because Face the Nation was like unable to accept that was the case. She's like, so they're making bombs elsewhere? It's like, no, they're willing to give it up because they don't want bombs. So they're making some bombs. That was basically how it went. It was really bad. But he's very clear. You can read the article. They agreed to zero enrichment uranium stockpiling. And he said that they would either downgrade, well, both. They would downgrade what they currently have in use, and that they would give up their enriched uranium that they have stockpiled entirely. But we have to go in to get it. The point is, the next day they bombed them. Peace within reach as Iran agrees, no nuclear material stockpile. Israel immediately bombs Tehran, and U.S. promptly joins. This can only mean that it was never about nuclear weapons. Well, we know this because they didn't, and the evidence shows that. But we also know that they were planning it before they ever got to this point. As Israel told you, weeks before this, they already planned the day they would bomb. They also told you, and Trump admitted, they were arming the Kurds a month before this. So this was always planned, just like every other illegal war they've been in, and Israel seems to be driving it like before. So Trump says he's not afraid of a long, forever Vietnam type war. But don't worry, guys, no more forever wars, because that's just not how this is going to work. In fact, let me, where was it? There's a clip from Hegseth. Yeah, so he says, the media here, not all of it, but much of it, they want you to think just 19 days into the conflict that we're somehow spinning towards an endless abyss of a forever war. Nothing could be further from the truth. Well, maybe. I mean, like I said, maybe they're going to stop because they're losing. But meanwhile, oh, by the way, we need $200 billion, not $21 billion. We need $200 billion for the Iran war that we're going to spin up really quickly. Totally makes sense, doesn't it? On top of that, the point is that, well, if it's not a forever war, then why is Trump willing to say that he's not afraid of it becoming a forever war? That's just crazy where we are. And on top of that, I just have to point out, it's cringy is the right word. That this person asked a very clear question. Are you afraid of this becoming a long-term war? Fine, use the word concerned. But they use the word afraid. And Trump is just too small of a person to admit that he's afraid of anything.
Because the Iranian regime has told Sky News, if you put boots on the ground in Iran, it will be another Vietnam. Are you afraid of that?
No, I'm really not afraid of anything.
Oh, he's so tough. I'm not afraid of anything. That's not even the effing question, man. Are you worried about this becoming a long-term war? I'm not afraid of anything. He's just such a small person. And it's just anybody who's not blindly supporting or blindly hating can see. So I'm not either of those things. It's obvious that's a very childish thing to say. Not afraid of anything. Everybody has something they're afraid of. The point is, it's not, it's because obviously this is where it's going. And money and everything else is showing you this is turning into just another long-term war, probably which is internally in their own discussions, probably the plan, if you want my honest opinion. But either way, it's not going to be the thing that we always know it's always going to end up and has always ended up. But I'm not afraid of anything. Does that in any way give you the feeling that he's not afraid of anything? Does that in any way give you the feeling that he's tough? To me, it screams the opposite. Weak people do that. I've never known a truly strong, I don't even mean like muscle strong. I've never known a truly strong person to need to pound their chest and scream, I'm the strongest one in the room. I've never known somebody like that that wasn't inherently wildly insecure and weak. So on the next point, he gets asked about this, right? Saying, well, when you basically in regarding, this is from a person from Japan, one of the government elements saying, why didn't you tell them before this was happening and so on? And Trump responds by, well, why didn't you tell us before Pearl Harbor? And this Eric guy is like, holy smokes. That's what he actually says. Holy smokes. Trump just dropped the bombshell. And I said, who wants to tell Eric from the new media what actually happened at Pearl Harbor? You know that it wasn't a surprise attack. The new media, guys.
Well, one thing you don't want to signal too much. When we go in, we went in very hard.
Meaning we don't want to tell our allies that we might be doing something. And look, there's some logic to that. If it's a clandestine operation, you don't want to broadcast to the world what you're doing. Sure. Aside from the fact that we're talking about an illegal war, that's from a benign sense. Yes, I get the sense of not wanting to just disclose your plans.
And we didn't tell anybody about it because we wanted surprise. Who knows better about surprise than Japan? Okay? Why didn't you tell me about Pearl Harbor? Okay?
What a weird and uncomfortable thing to joke about. You realize a lot of people died, right? Those were American citizens that were killed because the U.S. government allowed that to happen. I mean, it's the same as talking about the reality of the bombing in World War II and bombing after you knew they were retreating. You can easily prove these things, but the narrative from the government is the opposite. And so people blindly repeat what Trump said as opposed to the facts that you can prove, which is that they bombed them even when they were retreating because they both wanted to see what happened and scared Russia. So they murdered all these people in Japan with that bomb because they just wanted to use it, right? In this case, we can prove that there was, multiple examples. I've done shows on this, that there was knowledge and insight into the fact that it was coming. And as I just played for you from Patrick Clausen, we had to wait for Pearl Harbor to get into the war. It's exactly what he told you. So does Trump not know that? Certainly possible. But my point to laugh about this is the point is about disclosing what's going to happen from troop movements, which is the next point. But that you've got people like this Eric guy going, bombshell, why did you tell me? And everyone is laughing. If you look at the comments, just like, really? I think Max Egan and everybody else, are you seriously that misinformed about what happened? He's all over the place. It says, as soon as Trump said Pearl Harbor, they're all just, these are just young people, mentally, whether they're 45 or not. Just these are like the holy smokes, holy crap, Trump thing. And we're all so excited about the team. It's gross and it's embarrassing. And these people, I honestly, this is probably AI for all I'm concerned. I don't even think these are real things. These people, we just got an insight into I think it was Gunther Eagleman. People are suggesting he told people that he just can't wait to stop doing this, but he's getting paid too much. Who knows? Could be a lie. But I think we know that element exists in all of this. And right now, more Republicans than I've ever seen are going, this guy's a clown, because we are all aware of what's actually going on. And this is blind cheering for whatever they're doing. This same guy was like, no war with Iran because Kamala's the worst. And now he's like, yay, war with Iran because Trump's the best. Laugh at people like this. And so who wants to tell them? But they don't care about it. It's about narrative control. And of course, Eric Trump jumps in and goes, one of the greatest responses to a reporter in history. Yeah, there it was. The U.S. knew very well Pearl Harbor was going to be attacked. Guys, this is basic stuff. It's not conspiracy theory. It's documented information. And everybody, not a government lackey and blind partisan, is down here going, you're an idiot. We all know that's not the case. Doesn't matter, though. Okay, back to the point. Independent. Trump on Iran. This is from today, at least reported today. I'm not putting troops anywhere. But if I were, I certainly wouldn't tell you. Yeah, exactly. That's kind of, it's the same point, right? Same conversation. So yes, guys. And this is the point, is that, he says he's not, But if he was, he wouldn't tell you. So that is a meaningless answer. So we know that they're doing it already. We know they're funding the Kurds. We know that they've deployed 2,500, which I know were done. There were people before that. There always are. And on top of that, we just got told that, well, deploying them to the island is not the same thing because it's not the same island. It's not boots on the ground. It's like Ukraine. It's not boots on the ground unless they're marching just like this and yelling these words. It doesn't count. It's just dumb. Like, it's not a war, but now it's a war. Everyone sees this. So the reality is that if they are going to, which is pretty clear they are, he's not going to tell you anyway. So why would you pretend that him telling you it's not happening is enough to convince you because you're a blind follower if that's the case? So here is what Mike Johnson said. You know, the rhino that everybody hated before he was the best guy on Trump's side. It is that it's not going to be boots on the ground, or rather a war regardless. Well, I'm doing a bad job explaining it.
If there are ground troops, should they come to Congress first if there are ground troops?
So if there's ground troops, which there already are, will you go to Congress? It's a good question, right? Because, well, you know, you could argue it's an imminent threat, even though the War Powers Act is clearly not involved in this. But if you're going to put boots on the ground, well, yes, that's very clearly an act of war. So too is bombing a country. So I know you know where it's going to go, but obviously boots on the ground, there's not anybody in any world can argue that that's not a war, or it doesn't need congressional approval, or whatever it is, or some form, whether it's War Powers Act authorization like Iraq or actual congressional approval. That's boots on the ground stuff, guys. He asked him, if boots on the ground, are you going to Congress?
Again, all the details matter. If we're completing the mission and it's a limited scope, then that's not a declaration of war.
If we complete the mission, I don't even know why that has any bearing on whether it's legal in the first place. If we just win, that doesn't matter, apparently, in there's authoritarian elitist mind, but that we don't need it.
Then that's not a declaration of war.
It's not a declaration of war because
if we're completing the mission and it's a limited scope,
it's a limited scope. It's not. So it just doesn't matter. Like, so we can have 100,000 people, but if we call it limited and it's just a specific thing we're doing that we claim is eminent, but we don't use that to claim it, like, this is just dishonest, and everyone can see that. You're saying if you deploy troops on the ground against Iran, you're not going to declare war? Yes. Anyone supporting this needs to be called out for what they're doing. And I don't mean that you can support that Iran needs to be removed, and I'll disagree with you in the case of what they claim is happening. But if you support these so blatantly dishonest things, then you are fundamentally destroying this country for your team. A momentary win to destroy the very thing you claim you're fighting for in the long run. Some of them genuinely don't care about these things, and that's what's so alarming. But again, with all of this and the $200 billion they're asking for this Iran war that apparently will be over in a week, this is what Hegseth says.
My 13-year-old son popped into my office last night while I was editing these remarks. He asked about the war and the families I met at Dover. And I looked at him and I said, they died for you, son, so that your generation doesn't have to deal with a nuclear Iran.
God, I mean, it just makes my skin crawl, right? First of all, I'm willing to bet you that never happened. He just uses his son. I could be wrong, my opinion. But just with what we've come accustomed to, how much you want to bet that didn't even happen? But irrelevant. So his son comes in. They died for you. All the Americans you're currently covering up that actually have been killed. Or the fact that they were killed in a war you said wouldn't happen. Or in fact that they were deployed in a war that you said wouldn't even be deployed. There would be no boots in the ground. Or, I mean, on and on and on. You're talking about the idea that these people died for you. How in the world is invading Iran for Israel dying for Americans in any way? And on top of that,
Generation doesn't have to deal with a nuclear Iran.
the claim that we all know is not true, based on all the evidence that they have, that somehow by doing this is for you because we're stopping a nuclear threat that we all know doesn't exist. It's based on evidence that we presented, that the IAEA that we point to has told you doesn't exist, that Witkoff lied about, that the foreign ministers around them told you they lied about, and even claimed they're working for Israel, Mr. Zionist. Just makes me sick, like truly.
It's the truth.
Oh yeah,
They
it's
do.
the truth. Because you normally stress that it's true when you tell the truth.
So to the families,
I mean, that's actually funny, by the way. It doesn't always mean that. It's like somebody can say that and it could be the truth, but it's a classic thing, like psychology. When somebody goes, trust me, or it's the truth, it's sometimes a good indication that they're not telling the truth.
said, finish this. We will. And I say the same
Oh, yeah, his son said, finish it, Dad, finish it. Do you believe that?
to every American who wants peace through strength. May all
Apparently that means peace through genocide. What's happening? And I mean all of it, not just Iran, but they're supporting the genocide in Gaza. They're supporting the invasion of Lebanon. They're supporting the terrorist overtaking and ethnic cleansing of Syria. Peace through strength, guys. Pretty clearly.
Almighty God continue to bless our troops in this fight.
Disgusting.
And again, to the American people,
The idea that you fold in Christianity when you are literally killing people for no reason at all, and in fact, killing them for a religion that's other than Christianity, if you understand the Zionism perspective from Israel. How in the world does that even possibly make sense? Everybody should be outraged that he would even include the idea that God supports whatever he's doing, which, by the way, they believe because this is a religious war for them. They're not even hiding it. He told his people. That's come out in 100 different reports that their own military are telling them, why is our government telling us this is a religious war to bring on Armageddon? That's a direct quote. How in the world is that not the biggest part of the conversation? Guys, that should have stopped everything. That we all stand back as Americans and go, whoa, 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 you're telling me we're fighting for Armageddon? Pretty sure we didn't vote for that. That doesn't matter because the left or the right, Fox and CNN, nobody really talks about it. I don't know how you can miss that. $200 billion. Guys, that's it's just incredible. That's 100% jump or even more. It'd be whatever. Bad with math. What was the actually change? It was 11 billion, then it was 21